To quote Bill O'Brien, the sun is out and they are fighting. But even with that, it was not enough as BC gets smoked by SMU.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is a special edition of Locked On Boston College here at the press box after Boston College loses to SMU 45-13 in the Red Bandana game. This is AJ Black. I am the host of the show, and I've been covering Boston College for over a decade. If you're looking for news, analysis, and details on your Boston College Eagles, you are in the right place. Locked On BC is a free daily Boston College podcast available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right. We got a lot to talk about today. BC on both sides of the ball looks completely overwhelmed. Their offense could not get much going. They had multiple turnovers. They could not stop the defense, and just a soul-crushing loss again for BC. So one of the big things over the last couple of weeks has been the looking at the games. You played two teams, Louisville and Notre Dame, and showed some development. You battled both teams. You kept them close. You were able to get to the fourth quarter down by one score on both of those games. And so you're playing a team like SMU, who honestly on paper isn't better than either of those teams. So you were expecting this game, and I expected it to be close or closer. That was not what we saw at all on Saturday here at Alumni Stadium. BC looked like, I don't want to say they look checked out because these guys are battling out there, but they look completely out of their league against SMU. You know, you put in Grayson James, he starts the game. You know, O'Brien has been praising him, and rightfully so. He's battling and he's working hard out there. First two drives end with him fumbling the ball. You have to watch the film to see. It looked like the second one, at least one of them, was his arm going forward, a questionable fumble, but whatever the case may be, O'Brien quickly yanks him and goes to Dylan Lonergan. Lonergan had his moments, but he too wasn't much to write home about. You know, BC had close to 400 yards of offense in this game, so they were able at times to move the football. Many of it was in garbage time, but it was in that red zone that they struggled. You know, going into halftime, BC had two drives that ended with them going on fourth down. And I get Bill O'Brien's rationale for going for it. You know, when you're playing a team like SMU who has a high-powered offense that can move the ball, as we saw, you're not going to win a game kicking field goals. You have to be able to put 7 points on the board, and you have to do it consistently. And now a lot of folks I can see were criticizing Bill O'Brien for going for it because both times, you know, there was a pass and he should have hit this to Jeremiah Franklin in the end zone, but he airmailed it. And another one where I forget exactly what happened, but they didn't get that either. So, you know, I thought a lot of people like, well, you know, you only would have been down a touchdown at halftime. Well, you saw what happened in the second half. BC gets completely outscored in the second half. I think it was like 21-0 or something like that at one point. And you know what? All that talk about field goals and going for it, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant at this point because whatever they chose to do, their defense wasn't making any stops. So I think what you saw in the second half justifies why O'Brien went for it there. Because he knew that at some point SMU is going to score touchdowns, and 3 points ain't going to cut it. You had to get touchdowns there. They weren't able to do it. Defensively, let's get into that because that was a big old mess. Defensively, BC let up almost 600 yards. I think it was 574, 352 through the air, and 222 on the ground. Another game that just, you know, you look at what they did on defense and you shake your head and say, how is this team supposed to win when they play like that? You know, there was a big missing piece to BC's defense this week. Bam Crouch was out. I wonder if he's done for the year because he's reached his 4 games. I'm assuming he probably would like to redshirt. And I don't know if that means entering the portal and if it means him playing here next year, whatever the case may be. I wouldn't be surprised if we never see Bam Crouch here again this year. You're missing him, so you're playing Owen McGowan and Bryce Steele out there. The big piece that was coming back was Amari Jackson. And immediately watching on defense, he's out there making plays. Like that was very encouraging to start the game. Also kind of depressing because you missed him all year. But you know, he's making big hits. He was good in coverage to start the game. you're thinking that, like, you see with him out there, like, oh, well, if he played this season, how much better this team could have been. But near the end, you have to watch to see who was in coverage on some of those touchdown passes. But it didn't matter. They couldn't tackle it. Their running back, who going into this game, you were saying, like, okay, SMU doesn't have the run game that Notre Dame has, the run game that Louisville has. You let up 222 yards on the ground, and you had, Derek McFall had 3 touchdowns on 5 carries. You had Tyler Hard, I think it was Tyler Harden. He had 130 yards on the ground. Like, you look at that and you're saying to yourself, they can't make tackles. They're slow to the outside still. They can't get off blocks. They can't shed blocks. Again, the defense really, really struggled here. So they, the second half was all SMU. It was so sad because this is the Red Bandana game. This is a game that's all about pride. It's all about honor and, really feeling the roots of what Boston College is all about, right? We're talking about, Wells Crowther and 9/11, that his mom was here, Donovan Azaraku was here. It was a great moment to have, like, a big BC game, and they just didn't have it today. It was, when you're looking at what BC was lacking, it was, when you're ranking this game in terms of, like, how bad did they get beat, this is right up there with Pitt. Pitt's probably a little bit more, but I don't think there's any other game this year that BC has been beaten as badly as they did today against SMU. So really, overall, just a really disappointing loss for the Eagles. And really, you look at everything that happened this week. You had the Mike Galtieri thing, with What's Up, Trevor, that whole piece. And he had the quote I used at the beginning of this, where the sun is up and we're still fighting. I have no doubt these guys are fighting. They made some big plays out there at different points. It just goes to, once the game continues to drag on a little bit, everything falls apart. And it happened again today. Like, that's the second half for BC. Almost consistently every game this year has been like almost a completely different team than what you see in the first half. They let up more points. They can't score. I know some of the guys on Twitter use that EPA stat, and their third quarter and fourth quarter EPA is one of the worst in the country. And I can't identify what that is. Is it depth? Is it coaching? Is it injuries? Is it scheme? I don't know. I don't know what that piece is. But the second half for BC, every single game has been a big problem. You went into the second half of this game where you were still, like, you were down by 2 possessions, but you were still in it. And so what happens to start the second half? I think they grabbed 1 first down, and then it was 3 and out after that. So, it's hard to tell you what's going on there. Now, in a moment, I want to talk about one of the biggest issues with this team today, and it's one of the lines. I'll tell you which one in a moment. It's the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered to Powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streak, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. I'm going to pick Boston College, a player to this game. Jordan McDonald delivered in a big way. He scored a touchdown when BC was just not getting into the end zone. This makes you wonder why he doesn't play more, but he looked impressive when he was out there. And you've been watching week after week. The performance wasn't a fluke. Jordan McDonald is on a streak. And just like Jordan McDonald delivered for the Boston College Eagles, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it all up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black here, live again from Alumni Stadium. I want to shout out everyone out there that listens. This week, Locked On became the #1 sports podcast network in the world. It's a great honor to be part of this. You guys are all part of that as listeners and everydayers, and all of you have made us your first listen every day. So that's really, really cool that we're the premier sports network for podcasts. So thank you all for listening. Now, The biggest issue for me watching this game was not the play of the defense. I mean, honestly, you could pick up a million different things. I'm gonna talk about one that really was tough to watch, and that was the offensive line. Now, Jude Bowery did not play in this game. He was in street clothes on the sideline. You saw Pape Sai play. You saw Kevin Klein and Logan Taylor at tackle. Sai came in later. Crounce, Robert Smith, and Doherty, I think, were the guards. And they let up, I believe, 8 sacks. I'm pulling it up right now. I'm going live. 8 sacks in this game. And that was brutal to watch. All 3 quarterbacks were getting sacked. You saw Shaker Rising later in the game. You saw, Grayson James really struggling to get the ball out at different times, and Lonergan too. Like, when you have no time to get the ball out, that causes a big issue. It's like the inverse when you look at the defense, right? Someone asked me, why are these teams getting such big chunk pass plays? And some of it is scheme. There's definitely a scheme issue there going on. But it also doesn't hurt that they get absolutely no pressure. So these quarterbacks can step up and sling it and throw, easy throws for quarterbacks at this level. While BC has to, it's like one Mississippi, 2 minutes, and they're already in their lap. This is not a good sign for BC. When your line is getting beaten that badly, SMU had a ton of sacks going into this game. But as Mitch and I talked about earlier this week, a majority of them came against Missouri State, an FCS school, and Stanford. Well, BC is right down there with them now because BC let up 8 sacks. That right there for offense is the story of this game. Because if you could have blocked in this game, you would have been able to keep your offense out there. And they were moving the ball at times. It was just those sacks just kept killing them. SMU, they were struggling with penalties. They had a ton of penalties in this game. And when you're not getting stops and you're giving up those types of penalties, that can really hurt an opposing team, especially when you're on the road. Didn't matter in this game. But yeah, SMU had 140 penalty yards in this game. How many teams win a football game with 140 penalty yards? SMU did, and they did it easily. That just shows you right there the difference in who was playing, how badly the differences are between the talent on SMU and BC. So that was a big piece. I don't know how to fix that offensive line. I really don't. You have young guys in there, as I said, Size out there. Crounce he's just picking up the game. Not picking up the game, but picking up the college speed. You get guys that are learning. I get that. That happens. But you also have guys out there like Kevin Klein, who's a 6-year player, Logan Taylor, who's a 5th-year player. You should be getting more out of those guys, and you're not. You're just not. And they're getting sacks, and it hurts your offense. Speaking of the offense, let's go to another topic, the quarterbacks. So as I said earlier, Grayson James played the first 2 series, and it was very apparent from the beginning. It was just not a good matchup for him. He had a couple good runs. At one point, I was like, just keep running him. Have him run the option constantly with Turbo, because they were moving the ball. They got like 30 yards or so on that first drive. But every time he went back to pass, it was a disaster. It was a 3rd down, I think, on the first drive. He just held onto the ball too long, got sacked. He had the fumble. He had another fumble. Like, it just wasn't his day. And I just thought it was, Bill had to do what he had to do there. He had to pull him, and he did. And he brings in Dylan Lonergan again. And so Lonergan, to his credit, I got to say, for big parts of this, he looked much better than he has in the last couple times you've seen him, like against Notre Dame. He didn't have the deer in the headlight look. He didn't have I don't know how to run this offense, and you're worried about that. I think when I see Lonergan in this game, it looked more like a much more confident quarterback. But in the end, it again didn't matter. It didn't matter. And by the end of the game, he gets yanked, and you bring in Shaker Rising, which at that point, your game scripted the runs out of the game, so they can't run the football. The defense can pin their ears back and just go rushing the quarterback over and over again, which they did. And that was it. You know, I don't, honestly, in the way this game went, I don't see, the quarterback is one of the big issues. The offensive line was a much bigger problem. And, the turnovers were bad too. Lonergan threw an interception. James had the fumbles. It was just a mess. Plain and simple, it was a mess. That's what this game was. And for, all the talk about development and seeing it go that way, it was rough. Now, in our final segment, I want to tell you where things go from here. My final thoughts on just the outcome of this game. I'm not going to talk about the ins and outs, what my thoughts are, and how not upsetting, but just sad things are at right now. We'll get into that in just a moment. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical systems for the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. You need parts fast for a project? Supply House is next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. And their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black of Eagle Insider here. We're wrapping things up here at Alumni Stadium. BC loses 45-13, a lot to a little. And we're wrapping things up with our conversation about this loss. So now that the dust has settled a little bit here, the fans have left pretty much by the third quarter, and I again don't blame them. What are the big takeaways from this game? What are the things that now that I'm thinking about it, where are we at? And my biggest thing is, I thought after the last 2 weeks that BC had at least one more win in them, and I'm worried that they don't. Next week, they play Georgia Tech, who is very much in the hunt for a playoff spot. They need that win bad. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Haynes King, who is going to take advantage of a defense that is a bit of a mess. They have a good, gritty defense as well. Excuse me. And I just look at that game now, and I would love to have the maroon and gold sunglasses on and say, hey, yeah, this is a game BC is going to definitely show up for. But this was the Red Bandana game. This is a game that you were looking to see them develop from, and they didn't show anything here. Then you had to head on the road to Syracuse. Syracuse, by that point, should be eliminated from bowl contention. They have arguably the worst quarterback. If they're going to continue with this walk-on that played lacrosse, you could still technically beat them. But you're doing it on the road, which you've won one game under Bill O'Brien. Do you feel confident about that? I would be worried about that. So to me, watching this game, I say to myself, 1-11 is very much back on the table. And that is going to be a tough offseason for this roster and this coach. Bill said this week that he feels that, the team is as cohesive as he's ever seen on any team. And I don't doubt that. I'm not in this mind frame that there's going to be this huge exodus of players in the portal. I do believe that a lot of these guys really want to be here. But I also think that Bill has to make some tough decisions here. This roster clearly is not talented enough to compete in the ACC. You got to figure things out. You got to be able to get some talent in here. If you are already, they've got 26 recruits already for the class of 26. Your roster can only go up to 105. How are you going to fit these in? You need to get more talent here. So that's going to be something that's going to be war. And then, of course, the coaching staff. How is he going to evaluate the coaches moving out? Is he happy? I'm sure he's not, but how displeased is he with the performance of each of his coordinators? How displeased is he with how things are going on the recruiting trail with these coaches? He specifically went out to build a staff that was full of NFL coaches that had tons of NFL experience. He doesn't have a ton of college guys. Is that something that he needs to think about? Something that he needs to address? Because You need to get guys in here that can bring in talent. You're not having that right now. That's going to be a big thing. And honestly, I would say for next year, I hadn't thought about this since the last couple of weeks. Do they need to bring another quarterback in? Is Dylan Lonergan going to be the answer, or Shaker Reisig? Or do you need to have a third option? Because Grayson James is gone. You're bringing in 2 freshmen, maybe one of those guys, DJ Bordeaux or Femi Babalola, if they sign. Maybe one of those guys will be the quarterback that you need. But right now, I look at what's going on, and you either have, you have 2 guys that haven't shown it yet. Like Reisig, he's super young. Could you go in next year? You could, but look at your schedule. I just tweeted about it earlier, but it sounds like BC's playing Notre Dame and South Bend now next year. Their schedule is tough. You're going to need a big infusion of talent. And I think quarterback might be something that you now need to look at. And that goes up there with offensive and defensive line, because your defensive line, you cannot go into next year with the defensive line in the shape that it was today. Josiah Griffin, I failed to mention this. Someone I had not seen or heard from much this year gets a tip and an interception. That was a great moment. I should also mention that. But otherwise, the reason why these offenses are scoring so many points is because they can't get pressure. And maybe you have a guy on your roster, if you develop them, get them a little stronger, or they get better at, a power move or a spin move, they're going to get, that'll help them get better on defense. But you don't have a lot of time to figure this out. You need to be able to get someone out there and make sure you do not repeat this year, next year. Because if you go out there and you have defenses, a defensive front line that can't win individual battles, you have to blitz constantly. It doesn't matter who your defensive coordinator is. You could bring Nick Saban in here, and if they can't do what we just saw out there today, they're going to lose more football games. You have to get talent here at that position. And that's going to have to be through the portal. And we'll have to wait to see if they're able to spend that kind of money, because the good edge rushers aren't cheap. That's one of the most expensive positions out there. But Bill knows. I mean, O'Brien knows that that's a big time issue. He's going to have to figure out how to get the school and everyone involved to address that, because it really does encapsulate everything that's going on with this team. Defensively, that's a big issue. Offensively, you're taking a bit of a gamble. You have guys that could develop. He said earlier this week that Logan Taylor could be back, because there's a rule about that awful shooting in UVA a couple years ago that could give him an extra year of eligibility, which I've never heard of before. But you could have him. I don't think Jude Bowery's coming back. It sounds like he also said that he's going to go to the Senior Bowl, so he's gone. But you have some talent. Pape Sai, he's young, but he's developing. You got Doherty, you got Robert Smith. So you have guys, but do you need to go out there and get more talent? And honestly, 1 or 2 guys maybe be the answer. Maybe it's Samir Johnson that's on your roster already, but you really do need to build this team through the lines. That's how you're going to get your team to win. Right now, they're not winning football games. It's depressing. It's hard to watch. And I know Bill doesn't like hearing that, but that's the way things are. And from here on out, you have 2 more games left. You have 2 more opportunities to win number 2. I'm not sure where that's going to go, but we'll have to wait and see. Thank you all for joining me. My name's AJ Black. Thank you all for all your comments on the side. And we'll be back again on Monday, where Mitch Wolf will join us to talk about the game, what he saw, his initial thoughts about this loss, and everything in between. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button before you head out. I love to hear from each and every one of you. So thank you all for joining me, and follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. I'm also available on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and all the other sites. So thank you so much. And we'll see you again for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.